What's up, world? What's up, Zion? It's Prince Easy coming at you again once more, as usual, right? I do have a couple of slides that I want to share with you in this fine day that we're having here. And of course, before we get to those, I want to issue a fair use disclaimer, right, for the copyrighted material that's going to be shared in this here video, right? And a fair use, right? So, without further ado, let's slide through this slideshow, right? So we're gonna leave that here. Yeah, of course, it's gonna be a general updatization, if that's even a word, of all the things that since we had a conversation have popped up on my peripheral. Okay. Yeah. Right. The racism now, it's yeah, white replacement. What is even white? That's a dilemma. So you're telling me if I get with a white woman, there will be some complication because there are some sort of different species. What is the race anyway? Does it biologically exist? Truly, the last is becoming the first, and the first is becoming the last in this at this pace. Okay, let's just be real. Interesting painting. I'm just built with a lot of questions when I behold this. But again, with this made up confusion, you know, they always make up confusing stuff. Well, one thing is for sure, in Africa there is a strong cultural continuity. So I'm sure people can figure out who this or what this means or which people drew this, right? But I can tell you there is a lot of similarities with a lot of Bantu tribes that have a custom of wearing like this, right? The top story, you cannot even make it up. You wouldn't. The bottom story is even worse. I mean, let's be real, right? Yeah. Who this? You can use your Google identity picture stuff to find out, right? Who this guy is, right? Again, with that interesting hat. Who this one? Right, the brother did a good job of giving the introduction, but again, right, since we are talking about the Odyssey conspiracy and stuff, right? Well, Mr. Dangote, is it the case of the middleman ruining everything, right? Because since this whole ordeal happened, people have been having a deja vu during the Magufuli time when you came through, and again, middlemen put themselves there and made the deal impossible for you to invest. Right, this country, like any other, right, these middlemen exist and they have the same effects, right? But at your level, you need to be talking to people with actual power, right? Not with proximity to power, but actual power. And for the scale of the investment that you're trying to do, that will be a minister upwards. Okay, not a friend of a minister, not an acquaintance of a minister. Maybe they could be used to acquire access or communication and whatnot, but that's not even necessary. Like, this is some crazy work that is happening here. Right? Almost edging to being scandalous. That's what's insane. The framing of the picture is genius. The heading is even more. Well, people want to force themselves to, I don't know, do anything to have peace, you know. Well, I'm going to tell you this as Africans. There's a reason this statement became popular. This homeland or death. For enslaved peoples, I think we done forgotten a little bit. But luckily, not all of us, right? Since when does the CIA do diplomacy? They're supposed to advise diplomats, not themselves doing diplomacy. They're supposed to inform. Well, what am I saying? This whole system is broken at this whole point. But again, this is a slippery slope. They want it all. They don't want some of it. They don't want to share. They want it all. So basically, just like any other nation, they have done this before. They want you to kick out every other investor that is not connected to them. If the money is not flowing towards them, then you're never going to have any form of, settlements or anything like that. So anyway, we shall see. Right, this is your nation. Yeah, you decide its future. Nobody heard nothing about this launch. We only heard the bad guys, right, being talked about, the Russians and stuff. Yeah, you better start talking with that synagogue of Satan over there, and of course, conversate with the Americans, because trust me, drones are the last thing to be worried about. These days, you just have to wipe stuff, or corrupt stuff, right? You don't need to send in a drone. You just need to send in a flash disk. But again, they know exactly what they're doing. They're making a move that is supposed to pay out, I don't know, a couple years down the line, right? Maybe make it a national security interests, hence heavy defense, the usual. Look at that, 14 times. And they missed these supposed journalists. They attacked 14 times and they missed. That's quite interesting. Let's just say that. Hmm? This is what is that. That is what is happening. Hmm? Lithuania, what is happening? Are you drilling yourself for what activity you're gonna be part of? Hmm? Hmm? It's funny, this whole statement, they never say where the drone is from or anything of sort. They just say an incursion. These are the words they use. Or violation of airspace, right? If they're too quiet, then you know probably it's the Ukrainians. Because this is not even the first warning. Hmm? Zilch, silence on this whole ordeal. Shovel. Okay. This leaked accidentally. I think the only time they're coming back is jets, and the Europeans are gonna partake. That's the only side they can blindside Iran. That's the only way. So do not have a blind side. These people have plans on plans on plans. They're evil. It's easy to be evil, you know. Hmm? The good old arguments and pushing and pulling. Hmm? Crazy world this here. Came across this, quite an interesting design. I would say beautiful even, you know. Different. So there's a theory floating around that there's a plan to establish a Rothschild bank in every country, and apparently Cuba, North Korea, and Iran were the only ones that were not under this system here. Again, like I said, the time that you settle down to eat your loot, that's the time that everything will fall apart. I mean, let's be honest right here. 90% is crazy work. Well, how about making peace? Making peace. Right, because if you carry out the threats that you have been throwing around this here networks, it's gonna be dark, and people are gonna be thirsty. Let's just say that. Running on woman, BCE. It's funny how these people throw out these numbers, huh? But again, it's hard to argue against. Christ and the dragon, right? That's what Drake means. France would not be what it is without the Frank zone. Look at that. Stating the obvious. So let's have a read, right? Navarro discusses the continued role of the CFA franc in the franc zone economic relations with France and several Western African countries during a radio interview. Right? He also stated, "We were caught red-handed regarding the latest revelation by George about the aid provided by France to the Malian opposition. The separatist coalition of the Azawad Liberation Front (FLA) themselves allied with the terrorists who have pledged alliance to Al-Qaeda, and that Macron lives in a completely different reality. These people, they don't understand or apprehend what they are actually admitting, right? They have no apprehension about what they are admitting, and they do this everywhere. It's not exclusively to that region. It's the policy of the whole of the EU Commission. It does this. They're doing it even here in Tanzania, interfering with our stuff. Nosy, imposing. While your people are literally criminals. Literally criminals. Your leaders are criminals. Right? And here they are admitting that France would not be without the Francophone. So what's with this discrepancy that we are seeing here? That French is all the way up there in development and investment, and the so-called CFA franc zone is dirt poor. So what is this? And are you going to address the blood that has been spilled by you supporting the so-called opposition? Again, I'm just bringing here documentation. So, I never thought data centers will be the one to bring down the curtain. But there's some crazy numbers that are coming out. Well, how do they gain consent to do all of these things? Because partially we are part of that problem. How? Convenience, right? We were promised convenience, and convenience is what we got, but we didn't really ask about the price of this said convenience that was to come due to the so-called Internet of Things that we are currently living through, right? So firing a city council is just the first step. Yes, of course, these people are bought, and there's even more and more stuff coming out, but that is not the root cause of the problem of this outcry, right? People now are complaining and whining, and because it's hitting them in their pocket, right? It's affecting them directly. Their electricity bill is through the roof, no water, extreme temperatures. And all sorts of electromagnetic interference, noise pollution but these are not new things. They have not started building these things recently, right? And the scale of these things are not even the scale of these things, brothers and sisters, it's insane. Okay, it is insane, and I am 100% sure these infrastructures do not exist to I don't know, to back up our files and stuff, right? Even though I believe, like, I don't know, a quarter of that probably, but the other half is just things that we are not to know about, right? And of course, it is all sold under the so-called banner of national security. This is what it's gonna get to, right? The tip of the iceberg was that whole Anthropic situation. So apply that same logic to Meta, to Microsoft. So then who runs this whole situation? Again, circling back to that alphabet diplomacy, right? That's what we are having here. It's all in control of what information. They need intelligence so as they can make decisions. That is the chain of events. They need intelligence so as they can make decisions. So there lies the power. If you feed them the wrong information, then they come to wrong conclusions. And that might be to your benefit, or it might have a negative impact on you. But again, that's just the chain of events. But this is well known, that these so-called intelligence communities of Europe and America, they're the ones that are funding this, right? Using the world's money, not just Americans' money. There's no such thing as Americans' money, not with this current economic model that we are running with right now, called capitalism, called open market. They are using all of our blood. If not our money, then our minerals. If not our minerals, then it goes on and on and on, right? They're invading whole countries, kidnapping presidents left and right. What do you think they're doing that for? So yeah, I'm here talking about it because it affects us, right? What do you think they make these hard disks with? Like seriously, what do you think they make them with? Minerals, not just plastic, minerals. Where do they get the minerals? So should I as an African be concerned about this sudden expansion that is being talked about? They want to cause this problem. They are doing this intentionally because we are not hearing any form of effort to slow down. You see? And it's not just an American problem, it's everywhere problem. Right? Maybe we should work on new algorithms for compression so as we would not need so much to do so little. Like seriously. What goes through the internet for most people? Pictures, videos, text. That's the majority. That's like, I don't know, 60% of the traffic. And most of it is compressed, heavily compressed. And then we have the special case users and whatnot, communication of other forms, right, that need specialized, I don't know, infrastructure. But that and what is there does not make sense, right? These statistics here, right? Between 30 and 50% of the planned US data center scheduled to come online are facing delays and cancellations. The slowdown is driven by supply chains bottlenecks. Just say China, please. Just say China. Okay? The critical electrical equipment like transformers and switchgear, several power grid constraints, and widespread local pushback from communities concerned about the resources and utility consumption. Yeah. Well, we're gonna see. But again, I need to emphasize the root cause of the problem. How did we get here? Right? How did we get here to this point? Right? This corporate greed. Right? With these people doing and basically things that we did not really ask for. Well, again, it's the tech bros and stuff. Anyway, this easy. Signing out. Love you. Bye.